Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Levi Stevenson, also the managing editor over at Wide Right and Natty Light. Here on a classic Cyclone Tuesday. Let's see here. For some reason, my thing's being wonky. Not sure exactly what's going on. Oh, I had the wrong background on. That's why. So, anyways, hope everybody's having a good week. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving weekend. I know if you're up in Iowa, you got just a boatload of snow. And probably had to shovel about. I know over here we had to shovel about a foot of it, so that wasn't great. But we had fun anyways. So talked about it at the post game on Saturday, but Iowa State obviously picks up a big win against Oklahoma State. Big, relatively speaking, in an otherwise largely meaningless game. They beat a team that they absolutely should have beaten in a way that was largely pretty pedestrian and boring. And now, they're 8-4 going into bowl season. Which we should find out their bowl selections this coming Sunday after the conference title games have been played. So we'll talk. I won't go too far into the Oklahoma State game since we talked a little bit about it on Saturday. But obviously needed to get that win to get to 8-4. I mean, not only that, but Oklahoma State's just a bad football team that you absolutely should have and had to beat, to feel any sort of modicum of self-respect. Just after everything that happened throughout the entire season, you needed to, finishing on this 3-game win streak feels good. It was against a really bad team, and then two okay teams, or maybe an okay team, and then on the road against a decent team. Doesn't erase the 4-game losing streak, but still lets you finish the regular season on a positive note heading into bowl season, when you can get some more momentum, you can get some more freshmen in on these bowl practices and things like that. And this is the time of year, there's these games don't count towards red shirts. So anybody that's on 4 games on a red shirt, we can absolutely still see them in the Big 12, not the Big 12 title game. We can see them in the bowl game. We didn't really see a lot on Saturday just because the game was it wasn't a blowout, so that we didn't see a lot of we didn't get the backups in the fourth quarter or anything like that. But otherwise, Iowa State pretty much dominated that game. Oklahoma State never really threatened. The running game once again went for just about 50 carries and about 4.5 yards a carry, which is what they've been doing for the last month and a half. It's pretty good solid running game you've built around. Carson Hansen had another 100-yard game. There was a long time he didn't have a 100-yard game in his career for a long time, and now he's ripped off 4 or 5 in a row now. And Abu Sama had himself a long touchdown run, and overall the offense really didn't try to do too much. They really didn't take any shots downfield. We did see a couple drops by the receivers again, unfortunately, but Chase Soul did have a couple nice plays. We saw the pop pass to Brent Bramer in the end zone. Overall, it was a very vanilla game plan. They really didn't try to do much of anything. The Serious Stranger says this season will be a success if Campbell stays. It's a strange comment because the season's basically over already. The idea that it can only be a success if Campbell won. I just want to get this out of the way right now. I've seen and heard basically nothing that would suggest Iowa State is losing Matt Campbell, that Matt Campbell is headed anywhere. I guess it's to be with Penn State being still open. Is it possible, I guess, assuming that this, assuming the conversation has not already taken place and, Matt Campbell has not already just kind of lightly turned them down. If Penn State has not called Matt Campbell yet, they may be getting, not that it should have taken to this point of desperation to call Matt Campbell if you're Penn State, because he's probably the second or third best hire that you could have made in this cycle. After maybe you like Kurt Cignetti better, or maybe you I don't know, pick another guy. But Matt Campbell is about as good a fit as Penn State could possibly ask for. If they have not already, backed up the Brinks truck to him, and they, that's not to say they can't, But I would be kind of surprised if Penn State hadn't at least tested the water a little bit, hadn't at least kind of like made a call and just like gauged interest from Matt Campbell. I'd be pretty surprised if that didn't happen already. But I mean, I guess that theoretically it could have. Penn State could open up other jobs. But the problem is that all the jobs that Penn State could have opened up they've all been filled. Like Florida's been filled. Arkansas has been filled. Auburn's been filled. Virginia Tech's been filled. Ole Miss is open now, but I kind of don't think they'll really look at Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell's not a great fit there. Just culture wise, I don't think Matt Campbell's a good fit for Ole Miss. That's not a concern for me. That's really my thing here. Jason's right on the points. I don't think there's anything that's going to open up anymore. Like assuming like if Penn State goes in the direction other than Matt Campbell, right now I believe they will. But assuming Penn State goes in a direction that is not Matt Campbell, the job that's going to open up, I can't think of a single job that would open up because of that, which would be dramatically more enticing to Matt Campbell than just staying in Ames. The only I don't see a college position right now that worries me for Matt Campbell. I mean, yes, Penn State, but they haven't already, either they haven't called him or they did, like they haven't called him and they're not going to, or they already did and he already said no. Like both of those things are possible. But right, as far as this offseason, I just don't see it. Now, could an NFL team, come in and potentially offer him a position? Yeah, I mean, maybe. Is that enough to finally draw him? I don't know. I mean, the Jets and Lions have both offered him jobs and stuff like that. Like, so he's turned down the NFL before. And now granted, that was in like 2020, 2021, something like that, where he was really right at peak. I wouldn't say like peak respect or peak stardom necessarily, but that was in that nice golden era where he established multiple years of success at Iowa State, but he hadn't been here so long that he was like entrenched at Iowa State, which Matt Campbell is now fully entrenched, deep roots at Iowa State. So, it takes a lot more to upturn those trees. Penn State could have to settle. They could have to settle for a G5 coach or Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly would be I don't think Brian Kelly's like a great coach, and people could just decide that they don't really want to bother with him. But the problem with the situation Penn State has themselves in is that they have to find an option that is better than James Franklin. James Franklin is a very, very good football coach, and everybody knows it. So they can't take Brian Kelly because Brian Kelly is basically objectively in every measure a worse option than James Franklin. I would bet 95% of programs would rather have James Franklin than Brian Kelly coach their football team. So for Penn State, they really can't take Brian Kelly unless it became down to a true desperation, I guess. I don't know. Like the problem is they may be out of options for, who's left that's at least a comparable option to James Franklin, if not better. Have they already called Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State? Has he already reaffirmed his interest? They've apparently, either they have or he has, the Matt Rule option apparently is not going to happen. Even though it made tons and tons of sense, he's staying at Nebraska for at least for right now. I don't know what their other options are that they're going to go to that they're going to see as being a legit option. That's kind of up to them. But unfortunately, they put themselves in a difficult situation where they have to find somebody as good or better than James Franklin, which is a very difficult ask, especially when the theoretical options that you would have liked to get are all basically off the table, unless they can just write a blank check to, I don't know, Nick Saban. Can you get Nick Saban to come out of retirement? Can you write him a check for $15 or $20 million a year? Can you write is a check for $20 million a year enough to get him out of retirement? Is that enough? I honestly don't know. What is that? Is there a number big enough to get Nick Saban out of retirement? I mean, Penn State can throw around, basically infinite money. So I will be curious to see what that is. But really, my point here with the Penn State thing, though, is if they have not already called Matt Campbell to gauge interest, they're not going to call him. It's like, even if he wasn't in the first 3 candidates that we're going to talk to, he had to have, there's no way he wasn't in the first 6 or first 10. Somebody would have from Penn State would have already done something, some sort of groundwork or some legwork on gauging Matt Campbell's interest. So that's why, like, if Matt Campbell to Penn State has not already happened, I would be pretty blown away if that happened. I'm not saying it can't. I'm not saying it couldn't still happen, I guess, if they all made a sufficiently large offer / NIL commitment. But, if you're Matt Campbell, James Franklin just got fired from Penn State for winning 10 games a year. I mean, where's the upside to that? Like, I know Penn State believes they can win a national title, and they can at some point, but what's the upside to that? I mean, if you don't win a national title at Penn State, it's been established that if you don't win a national title at Penn State, you will be fired, period. There is no amount of playoff success that is good enough to keep you from not getting fired. James Franklin was like 2 plays away from making the national championship game last year. That is apparently not good enough for Penn State. They believe that they are national champion, like that they're a national championship caliber program, which they probably are. What's the upside? You're going to get fired. Like, if you don't win a national title, you're going to get fired pretty quickly. So there's not a lot of, right now they put themselves in such a difficult position that it's not only do they have to find a really, really good option. There's a lot of really good options that may have been dissuaded from the job a little bit just by how they handled this whole thing. Maybe Nick Saban even commented on it on game day about James Franklin, about him saying it was wrong how they treated James Franklin. And frankly, there may not be a number big enough that Penn State could write to Nick Saban to get him to come out of come out of retirement to coach Penn State because of how they handled that situation. If it was he failed and they hired him, maybe do that. But Nick Saban made it perfectly clear publicly that he's not a fan of how Penn State handled that. So then they are going to be, stuck in a bad spot. Fairness to Penn State. It would be pretty funny. But I missed one up here. Michigan next year for Campbell. I mean, maybe, I guess. The thing with Michigan though is that Michigan likes their Michigan people. They like their coaches to have a tie to Michigan in some way, shape, or form. And Campbell has 0 ties, not just to the university, but to the state of Michigan. Outside, he's gotten some players from Michigan, but like, he's from Ohio. He's an Ohio kid that did not go to Michigan, has no connections, like no ties to the University of Michigan. If he was, for Matt Campbell, and for them to go after him, it would have to be a situation where they're going to pay him a bunch of money, give him infinite resources, which Michigan is able to do. And, and still have to be able to promise some sort of patience to get things going, because they are also apparently a team that will be patient. They're more patient than Penn State, apparently. But, that's still another job where if you're not in the deep, if you're not making deep playoff runs within a couple years of taking over, you're in deep trouble. Like, you're going to get fired. Oh yeah. Kiffin's contracted out. LSU was crazy. I get it sort of why he left, but the way he left sucks. And I don't know. That's a whole different situation because the SEC basically is now having Ole Miss is basically reaping what they sowed by voting in Oklahoma and Texas, by allowing them into the conference and getting greedy. And now they have, they're in a spot where they're clawing for 6th best program in the conference and all this. So they're kind of having to, sleep in the bed they made. But we can talk about more of that in the off season here too.